Actually, before we do that, I want to show you the port group that was created by the installer app, just to make sure we have all those VLANs, the management and control VLAN in place. So if we go under the configuration, networking, and let's take a look under vSwitch 1. So right here, two additional port groups has been configured for us, 111 and 112, with the name that we specify on the installer app. Okay, so those VLANs are ready and should be created on both hosts before we begin adding the VEM right here, networking, vSwitch 1 right there. Okay, so go back to installer app. Let's say yes, we want to install the module or add the module, and we want to install the VIB as well as add the module to the Nexus 1000V. Okay, for us the management VLAN is 32, and that's the ESXi host management VLAN. Okay, we'll click next. Okay, you can see right here under the host selection section, there's nothing show up, although we have 32.4 and 36.4. And this is because it is a requirement for the installer app not to have any active VMs on the host that we're trying to install the VM on, and that is actually a big limitation using installer app, especially if this is an existing environment where you have all the VMs running already. But if it's a greenfield deployment, then you shouldn't have problem with this. So what we have to do, let me go back with the previous button. What we're gonna do is to free up the ESXi2. So we're gonna migrate our vMotion, our secondary VSM, to the ESXi1. So in a sense that we no longer have the active VM on ESXi number 2. So what we're gonna do is migrate, change host, 32.6 going to .4, and we'll click next. Looks like it's not letting us doing the vMotion because there's some discrepancy on the VLAN settings. So let's take a look real quick on host number 2, vSwitch 1, and VLAN, and edit, Prometheus mode, reject, accept, reject, just to make sure those are correct. And the vSwitch is reject, accept, reject. So let's get to the first one and check the vSwitch also. Oh, this one is all set to accepts. Okay, so let's go back to 2 and fix those. Accept, accept. Okay, close. Let's try that one more time with migrate host from .6 to .4. Yes, it looks like we are able to do that at this time. Okay, so now we're going to have to wait for the secondary VSM to be migrated over. Okay, so the vMotion is completed and we no longer have any active VM on our ESXi2. So if we go back to installer app and let's try that one more time. Click next. Okay, now you can see under host selection we now have a 32.6 ESXi number 2 is available for the VM install. And here let's do a quick review and make sure everything looks right, and then we click finish, and now the installation has started. Okay, in the background you can see, let me see if we can go to that. There's a whole lot of activity with the port groups being created. So what the installer is doing right now is looking through your existing vSwitch, and this is not just vSwitch 1 anymore, it's both 0 and 1, which is the two vSwitches that we have on ESXi2, and basically migrate all the available VLANs is on there onto the Nexus 1000V. So we can see a whole bunch of port groups being created. Now the VLAN 32, which is our server VLAN, has been created as well. I can see a little dash L3 here. It's indicated it's a layer 3 port group with the capability L3 control that's going to be assigned and used for the VEM management interface to communicate with the VSM. Okay, now it's doing VLAN 60. So if you go to the VSM, we can see similar log messages that keeps showing up. Okay, so we have to give it a couple more seconds for all those VLANs to be created. So once that's done, we're going to take a quick look as far as what kind of configuration has been put on the VSM. Put the installer in the site as well somehow. Go. And right now what it's doing is it's migrating the existing uplinks. So the two uplinks that was on the vSwitch 1 and 0, those will be migrated in a second here over to the Nexus 1000V. And that's the reason why the installer app doesn't want to have any active VM on the vSwitch because it's going to migrate the uplinks as well. Okay, so you can see now the adapter just all of a sudden disappear. And let's make sure, so the VIM install process is completed. You can see it said completed successfully. Down below here it said status is also success. So we should be all set at this point. If we go back to the vCenter, the uplinks on all vSwitches has been moved over. If you go to the distributed vSwitch right here and expand that, this is where our uplinks interface are moved to. Okay, so you can see these new port groups is being copied over without the name that was chosen for you by the installer app. So if you go back to the VSM and look at the port profile that's been created for us, so show run port profile, and we can go through all these real quick. So these are the default unused port profile. Here we have the VLAN one, although we're not really using that, or it was for the management purposes for us. It's got copied over to, and it was on the vSwitch 0. And here VLAN 32, which is our main server VLAN, it's got -L3. And take a quick note, this capability L3 control. If you were watching our Nexus Layer 3 installation, you will see this is the command that we put for the interface that the VM will be using to communicate with the VSM. And one thing you want to take a note to is pretty much all the port profile that's been created has a system VLAN on it, since the installer app can't really determine for you what's supposed to be and what not supposed to be system VLAN. So just to be safe, they just put all those VLAN under system VLAN. Okay, so here 60, same thing, 59, and we also have two separate port profile for the uplink. As you can tell, it's type Ethernet and not type V Ethernet. And one of the uplinks, which is ETH2 here, is the uplink that was used to be on vSwitch 0 for us. And that's why it's only allowed VLAN 1 and 32, because that's the two VLAN we had on vSwitch 0. And for the ETH3 is the interface on the vSwitch 1. And that's why we have all these VLANs on it. Make a quick note here with the channel group auto mode. By default, the installer app choose the mode on for you, because there's no way they could have done LACP with the vSwitch, so it's always going to be mode on. And they also choose MAC pinning. Before we proceed, let's make sure that we have the VEM added to our switch. So let's do show module. You can see right here the module number 3 is our ESXi 232.6. So now we know that the VM has been successfully communicated to the VSM. Okay, so let's say that right now, let's do show interface brief. We're currently using 3.1 and 3.2, which is the first network interface on the ESXi 2 that was migrated from the vSwitch. Let's say we want to use the other two available interface and configure it as LACP. So first we need to enable feature LACP on our switch. And now we have to configure a trunk. So for the uplink, so we need to create a port profile, and it's going to be type Ethernet, and let's call it uplink_VEM. Do VMware port group, so specify it's going to be pushed to the vCenter as a port group. The switch port, just the regular config, switch config now, switch port mode trunk, and then switch port trunk allow VLAN. So let's say we don't want to put the VSM behind the VM at this time, so we're just going to do the server VLAN, vMotion, and the iSCSI. We're just going to leave out 111 and 112 at this time. And for the channel group, we're going to do, instead of auto mode on, we're going to do mode active. Okay, then no shutdown, and then we have to specify the system VLAN being 32 and 60, since we don't need the vMotion to be a system VLAN, and then state enable. And if we go back to the vCenter, we should be seeing our uplinks. It's been pushed to the vCenter from the VSM. Okay, so now we have to configure our new uplinks here. So if you right click and then manage host, since the 32.6 is the only one that's been added to the distributed vSwitch at this time, and instead of using those uplinks, we're going to use the other two available and assign that to the port profile we just created for the uplink. So two of those, going to create port channel. All of these are the VLAN that's already on the N1KV, so there's nothing to change there. So go next. We do not have any VM right now running on the ESXi2, so go next, and then just click finish. You can see briefly the module number 3 was removed and it's been added back right here. Number 3, if you do show port channel summary, hopefully we got our LACP up and running right here for the interface Ethernet 3/3 and 3/4. You can see 3.1 and 3.2 is no longer used. Although the interface has been removed, but the port channel is still there. So intro interface brief. You can see you can no longer see 3.1, 3.2. If you want to clean that up, you can just do no interface port channel 1 and 2. Okay, you can see how the VSM sequentially picked the port channel number with the channel group right here. Port channel 1 and 2 is now been deleted. Okay, if you were to lock into the upstream switch right here and then show Ether channel summary, and we can see the corresponding ports has also become part of the port channel. All right, the port channel 10 is going to be for the ESXi1, which we will configure in a second here. Question now is, with our remaining host, which is ESXi1, how are we going to install the VM now that we know the requirement for the installer app not to have any active VM on it? We can certainly try to put, since we just freed up the two interface that was originally on the vSwitch, right here, let me see, back to the vSwitch view, and you can try to add that back just to put things back the way they were. So vSwitch 0, we're using the VM NIC 0, and close, and then you can add the VM NIC 1 back to the vSwitch 1, like this. Alright, and then you can try to basically vMotion all 5 of these VM over just to free up, and then use the installer app to install the VEM on ESXi1, then vMotion everything back. But instead of using the installer app and have to go through a vMotion the VM back and forth, we might as well just use the update manager, which we know from the previous video can be used to install the VM even on the host that has the VM running. Just to finish off our lab here, we're just going to use the update manager to install the VM on ESXi1. Go to networking, and then add host. And here's the last host that's available, 32.4. We're going to use again VM NIC 2 and 3 for the uplinks. Then next, and we have a bunch of VM kernel that we can potentially migrate. This one is management. You can put that on VLAN 32. VM kernel 2 is on VLAN 60, and 3 is on VLAN 59. Okay, next. Now for the VMs, like I just mentioned earlier, let's leave both VSM behind the regular vSwitch, since we haven't really had those VLAN 111.112 created on the VSM, so let's leave those on the existing vSwitch, where we can, for the other VMs, put on the corresponding VLANs. So vCenter is going to be on 32. For this our test machine, it's also put on 32. Our jump host on one of the interface, we'll also put it on VLAN 32. Okay, we'll click finish. Let's see if just watch for activity on our VSM. Okay, it looks like the configuration is done, but yet we haven't seen any lock messages. Then if we do show module, we still don't see module 4 added. So let's do a quick connectivity test. So trying to ping 172.16.32.4. So you can ping that. Let's try to source from our VLAN 112, which is where the VSM is located. And you can see it looks like VLAN 112 is not reachable from ESXi1 management interface. So let's go and make sure it has the default gateway configured. So if you go back to host and cluster, okay, and then double check on now vSwitch, vDistributed switch, where the okay, it looks like we've lost connectivity to VLAN 32. So what I'm going to do for now is to switch all those. So here I have a direct access to ESXi1. So what I'm going to put these hosts back to its original vSwitch VLAN. Let's make sure we have the connectivity built to VEM first, and then we'll migrate it one more time. So right there is already on VLAN 32. Here with the edit settings, make sure this one is on VLAN 32 as well, and also the vCenter. Okay, that's also on VLAN 32. And then we can try these. There you go. Looks like we got our connectivity back. Let's try that one more time, but first make sure that VEM, or the management interface, has the correct default gateway. So if you go to networking right here, okay, so we can go manage virtual adapter and find VLAN 32, edit, then look at IP setting. You can see right here there's no default gateway right now. So go in and fix that. So you can see that it's very important for the VEM to maintain a layer 3 connectivity to the VSM, otherwise this kind of thing could happen. So 32.1 is the default gateway for the management interface on the ESXi server. Hit close. Let's see, we have a lot of activity going on now. If we just show module, you can see now we have module 4 added, which is on ESXi1. And we can double check with the port channel, and we also have the port channel established as well. So now that we have the full connectivity to the distributed switch on the ESXi1, we can go back and migrate the VM like we intended to. So here you can go manage host 32.4, leave those alone. These are in the correct port group already, so just on the port VM themselves. So here we're going to try it again. 32. You can see the reason we had the connectivity issue earlier because we're trying to migrate these VMs, and they are like critical VMs, but the VM itself couldn't really talk to the VSM, so that's why we lost of the connectivity. Actually, this one I'm going to do only the VLAN 32. Okay, next, finish. So we should be good right now since we had just verified the port channels uplink from the ESXi1. It's working. So we were to go back to the RDP session that we had earlier on the 32.42, our test machine, and we can ping to the internet. Okay, so just going to keep that ping up and running. If we go back to the VSM and then do show interface virtual, looks like we only have one adapter here, so let's go back and check. Oh, actually looks like we didn't wait long enough. So let's try that one more time. Do show interface virtual. Oh, there you go. So you can now see the two Windows 2008s just now show up as the additional V Ethernet. Okay, going back, and we still have the ping going, which is good. That means we still have the connectivity. Let's do our last test now that we have everything kind of migrated except the VSM to the Nexus 1000V. So on the test machine, Win 2008-42, we're going to do a vMotion. Actually, before we do that, let's make sure we know exactly. So right now it's located on ESXi1 on VETH10. Let's migrate, change host, go to 32.6, and let's do vMotion. Okay, looks like the vMotion has been completed. So if you go back to our test machine, you can see we never lost our RDP session here. And scroll up and down the ping, we did not lose any ping either. Okay, so we have successfully tested our vMotion. So you can see that the installer app tries to automate the whole process for you, but at the same time you lose a lot of control. For example, the installer app only does VSM in a HA pair. So if you just want to do either standalone or just the primary, you cannot do so. And things has to also be set up certain ways for this to work. It's definitely saves you from having to configure the switch manually. And this is including things like creating port profile on the VLANs. As you can see that when you migrate or install the VEM, the VLAN and port profile or port groups was migrated over for you from the original vSwitches. And as you can see in this video, that if it wasn't so that we needed to create a port channel, we didn't even have to actually lock into the command line at all to perform the configuration. So the big issue with using InstallerApp is you cannot install the VM if you have the active VM on the vSwitch that you want to convert. And at the same time, the installer app tries to migrate all of your uplinks interface as well to the Nexus 1000V, so you can't really gradually migrate the active VM from the old uplink to a new uplink, just like when we manually install the switch. But as far as installing the pair of VSM is concerned, it's save you quite a bit of time. So you can, if you decide to use the installer app to install the VSM, that should be okay. And then at the same time, you might as well also use the update manager to install the VM in case you already have the active VM running in your environment and it's not like a greenfield deployment. Okay, so that wraps up our video on Nexus 1000V with Layer 3 installation using InstallerApp. Thank you for watching LabMinutes.com, and I'll see you guys in the next video.